Hi everyone, and welcome back to Ascend's Friday Forum. If this is your first time tuning in, these webinars cover a range of topics, from the most commonly asked support questions to new features and handy tips and tricks to help you along your journey with Ascend. If you have any queries at all and you're not able to find your answer on the Ascend Help Centre, then please send us through an email at ascend@softwareofexcellence.com and our support team will get back to you as soon as possible. So today we'll be taking a look at a particular scenario that can be tricky to navigate, and that is how to handle a patient that has two third parties, with both being used and claimed on the same day. This scenario most commonly occurs when a patient will have a regular health fund, such as HCF, NIB, or Bupa, but then also be eligible for a scheme of some sort. So that's possibly CDBS or a government scheme in your state. Today, I'm going to walk you through how we suggest you handle this issue so you know exactly what to do next time this happens within your practice. When it comes to patients having two health funds, for example, Bupa, and then the second one will be a scheme of some sort. So, for example, CDBS. So, what I've got here is I have a test patient up, Jane, and I've just gone ahead and linked her to a Bupa third party as an example. So, what I would recommend is when you do have patients come in with this situation where they have the two health funds that they're claiming from on the same day, is I would recommend keeping them linked to the main health fund or the regular health fund. So, for example, Bupa, HCF, NIB, whatever it may be. And this sort of workaround will do for the scheme. I'll show you that in just a moment. So, after that's linked up all correctly, jumping back over to the ledger, I've got some item codes put through already. So at this point, we're just going to assume that they've already had their treatment completed and it's all been charted and the item codes have been entered. And this is where we'd be at when they come out to the front reception desk ready to pay. So the very first thing I'd recommend is processing the regular health fund as per normal. So if we go ahead and jump over to the patient walkout screen, we'll go ahead and see that I've got the 4 item codes entered in. I've got an 012 and a 114. These ones are going to be covered under Bupa. And then we have an 88162 and an 88316, which are going to be covered by Medicare or through CDBS, just as an example. So to create the invoice, I would recommend you go ahead and untick these two that are for the scheme, so in our case for CDBS, and leave the other two ticked. We can go ahead and create the invoice, and those two that are part of the scheme are going to remain there, and we want to leave those there for the moment. So at this point, you would go ahead and create the claim, and then of course go ahead and process the health fund as per normal. So I'll go ahead and hit send selected claim. I don't have a terminal connected, of course, but in this case it would go through to the high caps terminal and you'd be able to swipe their card and process it as per normal. So we're going to pretend that that's all been paid for and covered by the health fund. So I'll just quickly enter in and just a manual payment to reflect that as well. All right, so I just sort of sped forward a little bit, but at this point, this is how the ledger would be looking. So we're going to have the 012 and the 114, the ones that are being covered by the regular health fund, in our case, Bupa. Those will be sitting there and there'll be an invoice. Along with that, you would have the e-claim payment that has been now paid. And then you would have whatever that gap payment was. I just did $50 for our scenario. So at this point, you still have those two item codes that are related to the scheme, which in our case is CDBS. This would work the same for any schemes. So at this point, what we'll want to do before we go to the patient walkout, and this is where it does get a little bit tricky having two different health funds for patients, is you will want to make sure you manually update the fee for that scheme to what it's supposed to be, because this patient is linked to Bupa. And for example, if your practice was a preferred provider for Bupa, their fees would be different to your regular fees, and of course different to the Medicare fees. So these fees that are listed here may not be correct by default for the scheme. So what you would want to do first is just jump onto that item code and just go ahead and manually update the fee to what you need it to be. So for example, if I knew that 88162 was actually $100, I would go ahead and update that. And then once that's fine, we'll go ahead and save. and we would just need to go ahead and do the same for the other one as well, the 88316 I've got here. So as another example, let's pretend that I know that that's $120 for Medicare. So I'm going to go ahead and change that and then save it. So at this point, all we've done is just updated the fees on the patient's ledger. Once the fees are correct, that's when we can then go to the patient walkout and sort of process it as per normal. So with schemes, because you don't complete them through the HiCaps terminal electronically, as in it doesn't send directly from Ascend to the HiCaps terminal, it's quite typical that you'll sort of leave the claim sitting there on the patient's account until you receive the payment back. So in the case of Medicare, you might be claiming on the terminal manually, which is perfectly fine, and then you can enter in the manual e-claim payment after. However, some other situations, if you have to manually send a form through to the scheme and then wait a week or two till you receive the payment, then you would just follow your regular process. But at this point, after we've updated the fees, we can go to the patient walkout. It will just be those two item codes for the scheme that are sitting there to have the invoice created. So as per normal, go ahead and create the invoice. Once you've done that, you can then also go ahead and create the claim. So it would just be, again, those two item codes for the scheme, and we can create that claim. Now, at this point, you would follow the process that you currently take when it comes to Medicare or any other scheme you might have, even DVA. So at this point, you would just close out of the patient walkout because you're not going to process it electronically. And once the payment does come in, because there is the unsent claim sitting there, you can complete the payment as per normal as well. So if we receive the payment for this patient's CDBS claim already, then we can go ahead and enter that in and then enter in the payment method that you typically will enter as well. So it's probably the a third party payment check. And of course, if you typically will put in a tag such as CDBS, I would recommend doing that as well. At this point as well, in this check number box, I would also recommend putting in perhaps just the word CDBS, sorry, or something else to demonstrate that it's from Child Dental Benefit Scheme, so Medicare or something along those lines prior to saving the payment as well. The reason being is you might notice that when entering it this way, the payment received claim line does show that it's with Bupa, even though that technically was a CDBS payment. Now, this will affect when you run the deposit slip report, but it is worth noting that in the third party payment check area of the deposit slip report, it does show the health fund that it was covered by. So in our case, it would technically count that as Bupa. However, if you do put something into the check number, that will reflect whatever was in that check number area. So if you put something like CDBS or Medicare, you will be able to easily see that that's actually what it was. So I would also recommend doing that. So at this point, after you've put through that payment, this overall is what the patient's ledger would look like. So you would have all item codes completed that day. So some were claimed via their regular health fund, some were via the scheme. You will have the two invoices, their gap payment, and then finally you would have the third party payment check. One thing that I would recommend that might make this process a little bit easier when it comes to having to manually update the fees is because you only have a limited number of schemes, I would recommend printing out the fee schedules for those schemes and maybe having them at the front desk somewhere so that staff can easily refer to them. I know some fees, such as CDBS or such Medicare, some staff might know off the top of their head, so that might be a little bit easier, but some of the other schemes might be a little bit less common, and so they may not know those. And of course, it can be quite time consuming to go into settings, check the fee schedules, and some staff might not even have access to that. So I would recommend printing out the fee schedules just for those schemes and having them available for the reception staff so they can manually update these. The developers are looking into a solution for this later this year, so this will just be a temporary workaround in the interim until that's been released. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in to Ascend's Friday Forum. A few quick reminders before I let you go. If you have any ideas or suggestions that you would like to put forward that you feel would help make Ascend a better product, we are always looking for and welcome any feedback. So we do have a request a feature link directly within Ascend. Once you access this link, you will be taken to our Ascend AU hub page where you can add a new idea as well as comment on and vote for other people's ideas. So be sure to check that out. If you would like to revisit this topic or any previous webinars, you can also do so through the Ascend Resource Centre. You can access the Resource Centre via the Help button directly from within Ascend, and it is regularly updated, so be sure to check back there to find answers to all of your questions. If you do have any other questions, you can also send them through to ascend@softwareofexcellence.com and we'll be in touch right away. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day and don't forget to tune in next time.